Welcome back to another episode of Street Level Marketing. I'm your host, Mark Lamplugh, and we have a great show for you this hour. I have Evan Millman on the show, and we're going to talk, about building brands, that don't fall behind. I think we have a lot of good examples over the last 15 years of companies that stayed stagnant, didn't innovate, and one that I can think of off mine is Blockbuster. And then the other one that I can think of off the top of my head is Netflix, both in the same kind of category. Blockbuster kind of faded out of the times because they didn't innovate. But Netflix started off one way as a subscription service to rent movies, and then you could go to the machines, and then they transferred their whole business model to streaming once it started becoming popular, and they grow and grow. So I think they're perfect examples. And Evan's got a lot of experience, building brands. He's with Upland. He's a brand strategist and an innovation advisor. So, Evan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. Really excited to get going here.
Yeah. So, Evan, what defines a truly disruptive idea in today's oversaturated market?
Yeah. Well, I'd say a truly disruptive idea is one that changes what people expect from a category. So it's not just adding a new product. It rewrites the rules of how people think, choose, or behave. And it feels maybe obvious in hindsight, but at the time, it's the idea that makes people stop and say, oh, I didn't know I could have that. And that's when you've known you've hit on something real for people.
Yeah. What's some of the earliest signal that something has the potential of being disruptive?
Yeah. So this is actually an interesting one. I'd say it's when consumers don't just use a product as the way that we intend it, but they're actually adapting it. So they're seeing more potential than the original maker did. This could be, we've seen people repurposing mini humidifiers to diffuse oils or to humidify their pet spaces or for houseplants. So those are the kind of huge signals. We're looking at every single way that someone is interacting with a product and spending much longer with a person to identify those, what we call weak signals or an unmet need.
I see.
Yeah.
Can you share a personal example of an idea catching early that turned out to be really big?
Yeah. So I guess this is further back. So I was working with a little company called Gatorade back in the day. They were trying to get the G2 product right. And what people were actually doing was still mixing regular Gatorade and cutting it with water, even though, that effectively that's what G2 was. So that was allowed us to understand that it really needed to relaunch. This was a product that needed to better communicate what G2 was. It relaunched as Gatorade Zero Sugar, and then followed the rest of the portfolio as Gatorade Zero. So, and since then has really changed that category. I suppose maybe Powerade came first with that value proposition, but for Gatorade, at least, it allowed them to stay really relevant in a new world of less sugar.
Yeah. You used to have the one flavor of Gatorade, the lemon lime, and then now they have the ones with the electrolytes, and they're a perfect example of a company that seems to move with the tide and come up with new trends.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're definitely under a lot of pressure right now from the likes of Liquid IV, coconut water, protein. It's always been chocolate milk. So sports hydration is in beverage in general is a bloodbath that they need to stay ahead of.
Yeah. How do you separate noise from a genuine opportunity?
There's a lot of noise. So that's a fair question. So typically you're seeing the same tension in a lot of different places and a lot of different categories that are next to each other. So you'll see maybe in trail mix, the same tension as within nuts and candy and in cookies, and maybe a brand all the way over on one side of the market is starting to innovate in the rest of those sister categories aren't. That lets you typically that's a pretty good indication that the area is ripe for a new product. The consumers are ready to receive it. You do see a lot of brands innovating maybe too ahead of their time, where a product could actually be very viable 5 years from now. But today, consumers are not trained to really understand or accept the value proposition. So, sometimes that's noise. But if you really want to be sure, you got to look at tangential categories, I'd say.
Yeah. This one, the next question I have for you, really, it comes back to me is, you come up with ideas and marketing campaigns that, you think ahead of time, like, this is it, this is the one that's going to do it. And it falls flat. And then you have the one that you had no idea, you thought it was just going to be like a regular daily post and it goes viral. What role does intuition versus data play in spotting innovations early?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe this is a little too easy of an answer, but I'd say intuition tells you maybe where to explore. So, we're all sitting in these industries. You're in the car industry. I'm in, a lot, but, do a lot of food and beverage. You tend to pick up a lot of pet hypotheses or places that you really want to explore. But right, the data, that's what allows you to drill in once you find the territory and actually understand what part of your intuition is correct, or maybe change your mind completely. So, this could be a place where a brand will have a gut hypothesis on where to explore, but where a company like mine will come in and validate it, much more for innovation than just quant data on consumers or focus groups on consumers, because they can't necessarily tell you where the answers are. You need to go out and look for those weak signals. We can talk about those, as we dig in. There's a lot of different ways to do so, but intuition really helps you notice, where to dig in the first place, I'd say.
I mean, are there any industries more ripe now? I mean, I can think of one. More ripe for
Is it behind your head? Is that why you said it?
Well, no, we got that one, and then I'm thinking about AI.
Sure, yeah. I mean, AI, that's a whole probably above my pay grade necessarily to talk about what's next in AI. Yeah. But I'd say, what I'm working on a lot right now is innovation through packaging. There's so much potential to create awesome products based on how people natively use packaging, but packaging companies themselves are relying on, a food or drink or a consumer company to tell them how a consumer is using them. A packaging company could go in and start researching the consumer and bring those ideas right to their customer and win much more business by being, far more innovative and consultative. My mind goes to Graza olive oil. Maybe I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. It's not a packaging company innovating. The brand Graza essentially said, people love a good, accurate, controlled pour of olive oil. Why don't we put that in sriracha bottles that allow you to do that perfectly? And now an entire category is upended because of a simple observation.
That I actually just shared a post, I think it was like last week, about packaging and how much thought went into Apple and how they boxed their products. The opening experience. So it kind of made me think of that.
Tons of money, right? I mean, I think you're paying for a lot. I mean, certainly you're paying for the packaging, and you've seen Apple actually not truly innovate on packaging in ways that it's getting credit for anymore. I mean, it still feels very similar to the unboxing of an iPhone in 2010. So, because of that, it actually seems like kind of a vulnerable place for them compared to competitors.
How do you get executive buy-in when the idea like really isn't obvious yet?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I'd say the best way to do it is to make it real. So this could be as advanced as a tiny pilot or a prototype if you have the funds. But if you don't, right, it could be a mock-up. People don't necessarily get excited by ideas or words on a page. They want to see the idea. And they want to see the consumer poll and tell the story around how you got to that idea in the mock-up.
What are some of the mistakes brands make when trying to be first to market?
Well, I think that being first sometimes causes brands to not be meaningful. So this is where the brand layer comes in. First doesn't matter if no one understands the benefit. This is what I was talking about before with creating a product that's perhaps ahead of its time. We've seen plenty of brands. I mean, Apple, not to bring up the most obvious example of all, right, comes in, swoops in, second, third, fourth, but with a clearer promise, and they end up winning the entire category. So first to market matters if you're really connecting to the consumer, and if you're launching that product in an interesting way.
Yeah. Well, we're going to come up to a break.
Sure.
So are you loving what you're watching? Don't miss a moment of street level marketing or any other of your favorite Now Media TV shows, live or on demand, anytime, anywhere. You can download the free Now Media TV app on Roku or iOS and enjoy instant access to all the full lineup of bilingual programming in both English and in Spanish. Prefer to listen on the go? Catch the podcast version of the show right on the Now Media TV website, www.nowmedia.tv. From business to breaking news to lifestyle, culture, or everything in between, Now Media TV is streaming 24/7, ready whenever you are. And we'll be back after a word from our sponsors.